So I want to show you that you can actually make very quick progress, basically starting from not knowing how to write anything, and you'll start to see improvement fairly quickly, following some instructions and some routine practice. I just want to show you some examples. This is practicing only 10-15 minutes a day for, I would say, no more than about 10 or 12 days. You can start to write something that is at least presentable. There are a lot of good videos and resources online that you can learn from. You can practice alongside with me. I will be adding a series of videos, inshallah, starting with all the letters and learning how to connect, getting all the way up to building into words and inshallah writing ayat. So I want you to realize that it doesn't take long before you're writing pieces that are actually presentable, and you can use them as inspiration as well as learning. So one of my objectives is to make progress on learning surahs from the Quran. Practicing writing them helps me in memorizing, as well as creating pieces that I can display as reminders and have something that aesthetically looks beautiful as well. So let's get started. I'm creating a series of PDFs that you can download and print, and these have a grid pattern arranged in the shape of a nukta. So instead of a grid that runs horizontally and vertically on the page, I have them arranged at 45 degrees here. One of the pens I'm going to be using is 6mm wide. This actually has a flat nib on it, which is not ideal for Thuluth, but it is convenient. So I'm going to go ahead and use this, and you'll see it matches up with the grid pattern in width. So I'll try to create these in additional sizes as well, but right now, if you want to download the 6mm version, I'll post them on the website with the link down below. And I will, inshallah, try to post every single letter over time. So we're going to start with Alif and work our way from there. Also practicing using these reed columns, which are worth learning to try to make yourself. And this is also approximately 6mm. So I might switch back and forth depending on what I'm practicing. All right, so for practice, all you need is any kind of paper and something to write with. A glossy paper does make it easier, where the ink does not spread out, and it helps the pen glide better across the sheet. So I'm using a letter size coated sheet. I'm using different inks in a few different colors. It adds some interest to your work and makes it a little more enjoyable. The inks I'm using right now are not anything particularly special. You can start with basically anything as long as it writes. Over time, as you get better, you can integrate more and more advanced materials into the mix. So, starting with the Alif, on this sheet, we can mark how high it is in nuktas. So starting at the top here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that is the height. The pen is held at a fairly steep angle to make it's not very wide. So you notice the Alif is not as wide as the full pen. It's pretty steep, so it only makes a width of about this much. Pretty narrow. If you use a column with a angled nib, that makes it easier to create that shape. So there are advantages. The angled nib is definitely the preferred way to write. But it does take more practice. So for some of these lessons, I'm going to use this one instead. The benefit this has is it holds the ink it's a little easier in holding the ink, and you get a cleaner edge, at least as a beginner. I'll try to do another video where I angle the nib on this. Okay, so to take a close-up look at the shape, again, first we put down 7 nukat, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If you draw horizontal lines defining the bottom and the top, one thing to keep in mind is the Alif is actually not vertical. So if we draw a vertical reference, the vertical reference line, the pen is actually positioned fairly vertical, approximately 70 degrees instead of 45. And we're going to come down at a slight angle for about 5 nuktas. So start at 70 and then come in at a slight angle going toward the right for the first 5, and then curve back, tapering to a point for the remaining 2. The hilia at the top comes across and lift the pen creates a space here about half a nukta, as well as on the opposite side, half a nukta. Once again, come down at an angle, taper the bottom back for the remaining 2 nuktas, and the hilia at the top is formed as a rectangle to start, and if you want to continue the point on the right, lift the left edge, let it continue, and then put in a slight curve to finish. So you have to be careful as you lift and avoid the ink puddling at the end. Trying to get a nice clean taper at the end is ideal. So still working on that. So getting that tapered shape is easier with less ink on the pen. Okay. So I'm going to start another row here and mark off the same height. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. And in this one, I'm going to go ahead and add some guidelines for myself. As the next step. So here I do not have, on the sheet I've created very light series of letters that you can follow. But now in this next row, you don't have that. So This time I actually have to think about it and try to create it. It's going to be a little bit more effort. So depending on how ready you feel to continue without guidelines, you can add more. Try a few more with this. And then when you're ready, you can try to, I would still would not rush on getting the height. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think establishing some reference is a good place to start. So I'm starting to drift on my line here. Continue. Alright, so this is going to be a little trickier because on the bottom the printer cuts off the print in my case. But again, the point is not to have a constant use of the grid, is to reduce the dependency on the grid. So you start out following a shape, then you try to avoid the shape, but maybe use some guidelines to determine starting and ending points. Try to eliminate that as you move forward. Now you try to eliminate the lines, see how you do. Ultimately, you're trying to eliminate the grid and just write and have a good feel for the proportions of each letter. The nuktas are really your best guide because your pen widths are going to be different, and depending on what width nib you have, you want to maintain the height and the width relative to the size of the nuktas. So once again, I'm going to practice here starting out with lines and then try to wean off the lines as you go. Now an exercise like this is relatively easy because you're repeating the same letter over and over, so you have a reference letter right next to the one you're working on. You're not actually going to have that when you're writing. Squeeze in one more. Practice on the grid if it helps you. Then continue to practice on just plain sheets as well. Without the guiding grid, you revert back to the nuktas. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These determine the height of the Alif. And then slowly move further and further continue to practice without any guides at all. Now taking your time on each letter. All right. And you can check yourself as you go once in a while. Let's see how I'm doing maintaining my height here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm close. The nuktas really should be a perfect square if you're going to measure the height, and obviously they tend to drift a little bit as well. In the end, not really achieving a level of perfection here, but a level of competence so you can actually enjoy it. So as I said earlier, one of the reasons I'm learning this is because I want to practice it to improve my memorization of surahs. Just because you haven't learned all the letters yet doesn't mean you have to stop at Alif and wait days or weeks before you can do anything else. So one of the techniques I've been using is actually moving on to words by looking at examples, and there are tons of examples online. So stick with the same Thuluth style, but find an example of something that you like, and you can practice, and it makes it more enjoyable. So these pens come in different widths. So I'm looking at this example of, so for example, you can use a small husna. And so I'm going to use a small one here to make a that's 7. Went too far. Okay. So this is to get an idea of the design that I'm trying to. The lam is actually similar to the alif. So that serves as a reference. I went a little too wide compared to the example I'm looking at, so I want to go a little narrower and a little taller in my proportions. So I'll try to make that change and try it with the wider. These actually blend color nicely as well, so that's something nice about them. Let's see how this goes. I'm going to try one more time. Alright, can I end with some more practice? I'm going to check again my height here. Clearly I'm drifting a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe a little tall. Finish up with reducing the height a little bit. I'm going to stop here for today. I hope you found that helpful. Please let me know in the comments down below. Try to make it fun. Try to find something that you can actually apply what you learn. 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day. You'll be surprised how far you'll come in a very short period of time. See you next time. God bless.